Gary's one of the most intrepid hikers we got. Great at winter stuff, and I can't thank him enough for what he's about to do for us. Thank you, Gary.
Gary, you ready for the lights?
Sure.
That might be good.
Hello. All right. So what I'm going to talk about here tonight is the ADK's Winter Mountaineering School. And I think there's only one person in the audience that's been to the school, right? Reinhard, you've been there.
I've been many years ago.
Yeah. So so I went there 2 years as a student, and then a week ago I came back from a 7-day trip as my 4th year instructor. We had a really good year. There were 58 students, and I think over 20 instructors showed up. So, delay. So the school's been around since 1954 and claims to have the longest running outdoor education program in the Northeast. And what it, well, I'll get onto the next slide. So the reason for the school was that, you know, back in the 40s, not a lot of people even summited the high peaks in the wintertime. You know, there just wasn't the clothing and the knowledge to do that sort of stuff. And to make people more interested in hiking in the winter, the Adirondack Mountain Club had a trophy they were trying to award to the college that got to the most summits. And it was RPI, Cornell and Syracuse. And as a result, they had a lot of injuries and accidents in the mountains. And the state at one point was talking about closing the mountains in the winter because they deemed it too dangerous. Oops, I probably should do the slideshow version of this. There we go. So they saw a need for educating people on how to do this safely. And that's kind of the whole mentality of the school, is to understand the weather, the risks that you might be taking because of the weather, what kind of clothing you need to go out to the woods and come back, you know, in good shape. So, a lot of people in the Army, well, they went to the Italian Alps, and when they returned, they had knowledge and gear to safely go in the cold weather. And a lot of this gear became available in the surplus market, like there were these white Mickey Mouse boots, I guess they call them. There were heavy rubber insulated boots, and mummy bags, and things like that. So a lot of that led to people getting out in the woods, and more people that got out there, a market grew for clothing and materials to do winter hiking. So 1954 was the first time the school was held. It was day hikes at first, and later came overnight camping. And the program just grew from there. You know, it started out with 4-day sort of hikes and expanded to 6. This is a little slide of Penny's Brook that I did as a student. We used our crampons, got up Penny's Brook to the point where it was dangerous, it was too steep, and then when you cut over to the left, you can summit Lower Wolf Jaw. And I believe, last year we did this with Reinhard, a lot, same trip. So the winter school has 5 different sections that they offer. There's a day hike section, which lasts 4 days. Backpacking lasts 4 days as well. The combination section, which is the one I teach, We do day hikes at the beginning of the week, and we do 3 overnights. And then there's the advanced day hike. Those guys hike in Johnsburg Lodge, and that's their base. And they do 2 longer day hikes, and there's a lot more student involvement with the planning of the hikes, the timing, how long it's going to take, just more of the, more complicated things about arranging a hike. And then there's the advanced backpack, which they offer every few years. Now, they've offered it the last couple of years. And those guys, they go out and usually try to get some remote peaks and bushwhack to those peaks. And they're out for 5 overnights. All the programs start out day 1. We go to the Olympic ski jump area, and there's a landing zone there. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a pretty steep area before it flattens out at the very end. But it's steep, and we go there to teach the students how to walk in crampons. A lot of these people have never had crampons on their boots, so part of it is just teaching them how to get those on properly. And then when we're done walking up and down the slope, we learn how to self-arrest with an ice axe. And I can show you a little demo of that. There's one of our instructors sliding over on his stomach and takes the pick part of his axe and jams it in with his shoulder to arrest his fall. So we have the students do that multiple times. That was feet first on your back. We have them do feet first on your stomach. Then we do head first on your stomach and head first on your back. So they get 3 or 4 hours of instruction on how to do all that stuff. Let's go to the next slide. So every evening we do at least 2 presentations. And here you can see we're using one of the yurts at Heart Lake for that, hold more people. And you know, the topics, moisture management is a big one, because a lot of people, especially people that have never hiked in the wintertime, go out and they walk out the door and they want to be warm, you know, so they've got too many layers basically. And so it's a challenge with some students. We had one guy who came up from Mississippi to be in winter school, and the first 2 times we took him out on day hikes, he sweated through every bit of clothing he had, even though we kept telling him to take off layers. And when we finally took him out for the overnights, we basically said, look, you know, you need to wear a long sleeve, you know, non-cotton shirt, A, and B, maybe a light windbreaker over it. And he was convinced that he was going to be too cold. And after 10 or 15 minutes of hiking, he was fine. And dressed like that, he never had an issue the rest of the trip. So that's a tough one to learn from people. We talk about risk management, how to deal with weather and conditions, and you know, maybe going up the cables on Gathics, if it's really icy, is too dangerous to do. Maybe it's because there's a lot of exposure there. If you slip, there's really not much to stop you from falling. Organizing backpacks, that's another thing it's hard for people to do. Of course, map and compass work, and then a little bit about emergency communications. So day 2, we put the students through a thing we call a shakedown day. And this is to make sure that all the gear they have, you know, their snowshoes can attach to their pack, don't fall off. They know where to put their crampons so they don't rip holes in things. They've got water that's accessible outside of their pack, so they don't need to stop and take their pack off to get a drink. So things like that. And we kind of watch the students for physical fitness. I mean, it's not like we want to stop anybody from going on, you know, 46er, but we kind of watch people, and if it doesn't look like it's not even close that they can make it, then you know we talk about that with them. So for the students I had, we did Big Crow Mountain, which if you know that one, it's just outside Keene. It's I think in the 3,500 or so foot range. It's a good starter. So when we go on day hikes, this is the emergency gear we carry. And really, it's a hedge against somebody getting hurt to the point where they can't move, like they broke their ankle or their leg, and help is going to be required to get them out. They can't get out on their own. So we have the materials to keep that person warm and comfortable until help can arrive. So that's why, you know, we typically go out, it's the ratio of students to instructors is about 6 students will go with 2 instructors. So if there is an emergency, 1 instructor can stay with the person injured along with a student or 2, and the rest can go over help. I took a bad picture of this. This is the trip registration forms we use, and you'll hear this a lot when there's a rescue. The rangers will talk about, you know, the information they would have liked to have had on the hikers. And so we fill these out and leave these with a couple of instructors at our base, which is at Heart Lake. And, you know, it just talks about what hike we're going to do, what the description of the route, how many miles we think it's going to be, the elevation gain, all the participants' names, and, you know, if we have emergency devices like a Garmin or a Spot, what's the address to look to find that. We've got a group gear checklist and vehicle descriptions. So, for example, we went out, parked at the garden for our 3 overnights and walked in almost to JBL to set up a camp. And we didn't have any coverage there, except one guy had an iPhone where he could get satellite messages, which was kind of cool. But the other really important thing we stress at the school is identifying a turnaround time and then sticking to it, very strictly sticking to it. So the idea is we want to be back by dark, which is around 5 o'clock right now in the Adirondacks. So there's a turnaround time that we adhere to, you know, so that we can get back to camp before 5. And then the other thing on this form is the overdue time. So if we say, you know, we're going to be back to, you know, Heart Lake by 6 p.m., you know, we might set an overdue time at 7 or 7:30, something like that. And if we're not back, then the instructors at Heart Lake are going to start, they've got a whole protocol they follow for what they're going to do, who they're going to send to the trailhead we were at, and contacting the DEC, and all those things. It's an all written procedure for what to do about late hikers. So day 3, we usually arrange to have 4 or 5 hikes that the students can pick. They don't have to go with their instructors and their teammates. So this year we had Algonquin, Giant, Street and I think the Van Hovenberg, and I took a group up to Hurricane Mountain, which is what you're looking at here. We had a very cold day. It was windy up there. But, you know, you could see Lake Champlain in the distance. It was a really clear, nice day, just cold. And, yeah, there's the happy students. So day 4 for the 4-day programs, everybody comes back to the lodge. They have lunch and a little graduation ceremony. And for me and my students, we went out for our 3 overnights. So we, like I said, we walked into near JBL from the garden, and we stayed near a lean-to and set up a kitchen there. And then across the trail, we had our tent set up, our tent site. And it was cold. 2 of the nights was well below 0. And I think one night it was in the 20s. It warmed up, I think, for our middle night. So setting up once we get in the woods. Well, the first thing we do is stamp down a bunch of snow. There was a couple feet of snow there, so we stamped down the snow with our snowshoes to make a firmer surface for the tents. Once tents are set up, now we have to build a kitchen. So pile up snow, and if you take snow, you bring 2 shovels, pile it up and kind of pat it down. Eventually, it kind of firms up, and you can actually make a table. And that's after we set up our stoves. We have 2 stoves going. They're liquid fuel stoves, just because the canister stoves don't work well in cold weather. If necessary, we'll set up a bench. We had access to a lean-to, so we sat there to eat our dinners, breakfast. And then we'll put a tarp up over the kitchen area so that if it snows or rains, it just keeps the weather up. Water is a big deal when you're doing overnights. And if you're fortunate, you can find liquid water. So we weren't too far from Johns Brook, and we were going down there for water. And it got a little dicey. There were places where the ice wasn't deep enough. I think it's because the brook was running pretty good. And it got to be kind of dangerous to go down there and get water. So we switched over to snow. But water is nice because water boils pretty fast, even if it's 32 degrees. Snow, you have to make it water first and then boil it. So it just uses a lot more fuel, and it's a slower process. And, like I say here, with each person needing 2 to 3 liters of water per day, or maybe a little more, and there's 8 people in a group, that's a lot of water to boil. So, the abbreviation for Winter Mountaineering School is WMS. And some people say that the WMS stands for Water Making School, because you spend a lot of time doing it. This is our combo students. One of the objectives they picked while we were out camping was lower wolf jaw. So that's a picture of those guys, all happy they made it. That guy there in the brown windbreaker, he's our guy from Mississippi that had the problem sweating through his clothes. And on our 3 overnights and everything, his moisture management was excellent. Because what we were worried about is he couldn't bring enough clothes out to stay warm and dry. And we were worried about hypothermia. So he did bring a 4-season tent that he bought out of Mississippi, really nice one. And I warned him about the vent that's in the 4-season tent typically. And he didn't have it open quite enough. And he ended up with like a little snowstorm in his tent because he was sleeping in there with the student on his right, the guy in the orange. And 2 people, there's moisture coming off your body all night, you're breathing, there's a lot of moisture in the tent. And I have a 3-season tent, which has it all open ceiling with mesh. So I had no problems at all, except wind coming in. But anyways, the second night they opened up the vent and everything was good. And that's the URL for the winter school. If you go there, there's a really excellent student handbook that you can, you don't have to pay anything, it's free. You can take a look at the programs that are offered. So I would say even if you're not going to go to winter school, but your winter hike, it's worth reading the student handbook. And the other thing I'll mention, because I'd be remiss to not mention it, is that Rochester has its own Winter Mountaineering Society /school. And I know of it. I've been to the website, looked at it, and talked to people. One of the people that has gone out with these guys is Reinhardt, so he could probably tell you a whole lot more about this experience. But there are a bunch of guys that know how to winter backpack and stay overnight and all that. So that's another good place. And they always have hikes out there, and you can contact them and work out going on a hike with those guys to learn winter mountaineering. Yeah, that's all. Unless you have questions, that's my talk. And thank you.
Any question?
Oh, Bruce. Do the graduates of the school kind of keep you guys posted on some of the ventures that go on the have?
Yeah, a lot of students, strangely, I thought the number of students that mentioned this, they want to go to Mount Rainier. And so what I tell them is, having been to Mount Rainier, it's going to be very similar to winter school. On day 1, the guys are going to go through the equipment checklist line by line. I skipped over that part of the school, but we go through prior to school and at school, everything on the required list. And if they don't have the required stuff, it's a trip to the Mountaineer or EMS. You're going to learn how to walk in crampons and self-arrest with an ice mask. You're going to do the same thing on Mount Rainier. They take a day to take you up to, I don't know, 7,000 feet to where it's kind of steep. And you learn how to fall, and you learn how to walk in crampons. The one thing we don't teach is how to walk when you have a climbing harness on, you're roped up with 2 or 3 other people. That's something that, but it's very similar. Mount Rainier, people are putting the crampons on for the first time in their life. And so, you know a little bit more before you go. Yes?
Mountaineering plastic boots are going away, or pretty much gone. What are you guys using today? Some kind of other synthetic boot?
Yeah, the question was about winter mountaineering boots. There's 2 different kinds, basically. There's ones that have a plastic outer shell and then a removable liner that fits in there. And then there's other ones like I have that I don't have one here with me. But there's a liner inside, an insulated liner. And then the outside is sort of a combination of a few leather parts and a lot of synthetic, thicker materials. And people are still using the plastic ones, and they're still.
They're not making them anymore.
We have students that are buying them. I'm trying to think of Scarpa makes them, and I don't know if it's La Sportiva makes a model called the Barunce, and so they're still being sold. Yeah, I tried plastic boots my first shot at Rainier, and they did terrible things to my feet, to my shins, and I went with these La Sportivas that are a different, construction. And I've had them ever since, and they were, I walked in them for 3 or 4 days a week ago and didn't even have a blister. They're really good. Yeah.
Gary, can I add something up to that?
Yeah.
The reason they want you to have removable liners on these overnight trips is so you can take the liners out and put it in your sleeping bag, because otherwise, if you don't have that, your boots invariably will pick up some moisture, and it will freeze overnight. And now you get the joy of putting that frozen boot on your foot. So if you have a removable liner in your sleeping bag, it saves some of that agony.
I just made a comment because I called up various places in New Hampshire, and they're saying these plastic boots like Cough Latch are not being made, and they're going to some other, like instead of synthetic with a liner, but they have a synthetic outer. I guess it would be
Yeah. So for the day hikes, the school doesn't require anything more than a good insulated hiking boot. For the overnights, we require double boots, and that's probably the cheapest double boots out there are around $400 or $500, and they go all the way up to $1,000 now. And if you think you're going to go on, you think you're going to do Rainier and maybe things after that, maybe it's easier to justify spending that kind of money. But yeah, it's one of the harder requirements. Like we require a minus 20-degree bag, sleeping bag for the overnights, and it's pretty much non-negotiable. I mean, if you have a minus 10, maybe liner, that's okay. But if you're getting cold at night in your sleeping bag, and you start to get hypothermia, that's a walk out of the woods. An instructor's going to take you out of the woods. There's no way we're going to wait and see what happens with something like that. So, yeah.
Jerry, what is your winter pack full year with 3 liters of water weighing?
I think mine weighs around 50 pounds. So when I walked into JBL, I only had 1 liter of water because I knew that would, for the 2.5 hours it took for us to get in there. But I try to prepare for hikes. So if I can't hike, we live in Rochester, it's not very hilly. I'll put 5 gallons of water in my backpack and some other weight so that it weighs 50 pounds, and I'll go do the Stairmaster for an hour or two. Because, you're going to go through that same, it's not the same as hiking, but it's close. And, or I'll wear ankle weights, like 5-pound weights on each leg to simulate, you know, what a boot and a snowshoe is going to feel like pulling on my hips. And that's helped a lot. Maybe it's maybe more of a confidence booster than, you know, than anything. But you know, if you can't do a couple hours on the Stairmaster with a 50-pound pack, then you know, well, when we climb a high peak, we don't ever pack that full. Let's just get up, hit it out the can. But anyway, yeah, that's what I personally do, train for something like that.